Commander Thalia Drex sat in her command chair aboard the Galactic Communications Station, staring at the data screen in front of her. The station, a sleek and efficient hub of interstellar communication, was located on the edge of the galaxy, far from the political centers of the Galactic Council. It was a quiet place, usually filled with routine transmissions from various systems and colonies. But today, something was different. The message that came through had been a surprise, an SOS signal, faint and crackling with static. It wasn't uncommon to receive distress calls from planets facing natural disasters or pirate raids. But this one was different. There was a warning hidden in the garbled transmission that made her blood run cold. The Deathworlder fleet is on the move. Thalia frowned, leaning forward to listen more carefully. The words were unclear, fragmented by interference, but the message was unmistakable. The Deathworlders, the humans, a species from a planet known for its harsh environments, ruthless survival instincts, and combat prowess, the kind of species that made even the fiercest alien races hesitate. Lieutenant Sullivan, Thalia called, her voice sharp. A young officer, Lieutenant Jace Sullivan, quickly stepped forward. He had been working alongside Thalia for the past year and was one of the best analysts on the station. His reputation for being able to decode and analyze encrypted messages was unmatched. "Yes, Commander," Jace asked, his voice steady but alert. He knew something serious was happening. "Run a diagnostic on the transmission. I need to know where this came from, and if there's anything we're missing," Thalia ordered. Jace immediately began typing commands into his console, his fingers moving with practiced speed. The room was quiet except for the clicking of keys and the static on the screen that grew louder as they analyzed the signal. After a few tense moments, Jace looked up, his face pale. "It's coming from the Xelamok border, Commander, a region known for its heavy military presence. The humans are headed straight for it." Thalia's mind raced. The Xelamok were a powerful species known for their brutal tactics in war. They had never been particularly friendly to any other species, but they had been especially hostile to humans. That was a long-standing rivalry in the galaxy's history. The humans, despite being new to the galactic stage, had a reputation for being fierce in battle. And if this signal was accurate, their fleet was on the move. What could they possibly want with the Xelamok? Thalia muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "They're not exactly known for making alliances," Jace said, looking at the screen with concern. "If this is true, they could be planning something big." Thalia stood up from her chair, her mind already calculating the possible outcomes. "Alert Admiral Kexer. We need to convene with the Council immediately." The situation just changed. As she prepared to leave the room, the message continued to buzz in her mind. The Deathworlder fleet is on the move. Hours later, Commander Thalia Drex stood at the holographic table in the council room, surrounded by representatives from various species in the galaxy. Among them was Admiral Kexer, a massive reptilian creature from the Verrect Federation. His scales gleamed under the soft lights of the chamber, his eyes cold and calculating. The Verrect had been allies with the Galactic Council for centuries, but they viewed humanity with suspicion. Their technological superiority was undeniable, but they didn't like the unpredictability humans represented. Thalia had briefed the Council on the signal, and now she could feel the weight of everyone's gaze on her. "So, you're telling us that the humans have sent a fleet to engage the Xelamok?" Admiral Kexer's voice rumbled, heavy with disbelief. "Why? They have no stake in this war." "It's not just a war," Thalia replied, maintaining her composure. "It's a matter of survival. We've underestimated the humans in the past, but now they've proven themselves capable of anything." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. The humans had, in recent years, begun to make their presence known. They were newcomers to the galactic stage, but they had already outperformed many species in terms of adaptability, resilience, and resourcefulness. Their homeworld, Earth, was known as a death world, a place where the environment itself was a constant threat. Those who survived there were forged in the fires of adversity. The galactic community had watched them closely ever since they first ventured into space, and they were not easy to ignore. "Do we have any more information on the human fleet?" One of the other council members, a sleek, silver-skinned alien from the HFY Collective, asked, her voice soft but sharp. "Not much," Thalia answered. The transmission was weak, but it mentioned that the humans have been assembling forces on the outer rim for some time. "We suspect they've been preparing for this move in secret." Admiral Kexer's eyes narrowed. "The Excelnok won't take this lightly. They will retaliate with everything they have." "That's exactly why we need to act fast," Thalia said. "If the humans are heading into Selnok space, we need to understand their plans and prepare for the worst." The room fell silent, the gravity of the situation settling in. "I'll alert our fleets," Admiral Kexer finally said, his voice low and deliberate. "But I don't believe we're prepared for a confrontation with the humans. Not yet." Thalia knew he was right. The humans were unpredictable, and that made them dangerous. But if there was one thing humanity had shown time and again, it was that they could face down the impossible and win. And this time, it seemed they were making their move, whether the galaxy was ready or not. As Thalia left the council room, she couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to change. The humans were coming, and they weren't going to sit quietly in the background anymore. They were moving, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Galactic Council had been in session for hours, but Commander Thalia Drex couldn't focus. Her mind kept drifting back to the message. The Deathworlders were on the move. Humanity, the last species any of the council members expected to challenge the galaxy's balance of power, was stepping forward. Thalia had spent the last few years studying the humans. Earth, their homeworld, was infamous for its dangerous environment, an unstable climate, wild animals, and terrain that could kill you within minutes. But the humans were a unique species. They didn't just survive. They adapted, learned, and thrived. They had fought wars, rebuilt their world, and against all odds became an interstellar presence. "Commander," said a voice, pulling her back to reality. She turned to see Lieutenant Jace Sullivan standing at the door, holding a datavet. His face was tense, his eyes reflecting the weight of the situation. "Got something new?" Thalia asked, standing up. She could tell by his expression that this wasn't just another routine update. "Yes, Commander," Jace replied. "We managed to dig deeper into human transmissions. Looks like they've been planning this move for years. They've already positioned fleets along the Selnok border." Thalia's stomach churned. "Years? How did we miss this?" "We didn't," Jace said, scrolling through the information on his datavet. "They've been very careful. The humans hide their moves well, using cover tactics. But now it's clear. They're making their play." Thalia glanced at the council chambers. The decision-makers of the galaxy, who had underestimated humanity time and again, had no idea what they were up against. She felt a strange mixture of fear and respect for the humans. They were different from the rest. While the rest of the galaxy relied on advanced technology and pure power, humanity used ingenuity. They thought outside the box, and that made them dangerous. "Have you reached Admiral Kexer?" Thalia asked. "We need him to act fast." Jace nodded. "He's already on his way. He knows this won't be a simple negotiation." Inside the council room, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The Galactic Council members, a mix of various alien species, were divided. Some were deeply worried about humanity's sudden rise, while others, like Admiral Kexer, were beginning to question whether Earth's reputation for survival and fierce combat was all talk. Kexer, the Varich Admiral, had always been one to doubt humanity's potential. He believed that the galaxy was ruled by power, by size, and by technology. Humans, in his mind, were a fragile species, not built for the harsh realities of galactic conquest. But now, as he stood at the front of the council room, he felt a growing unease. His sharp, reptilian eyes scanned the gathered council members, their faces a mix of curiosity, fear, and skepticism. He cleared his throat. "The Deathworlders," Kexer began, his voice low but commanding. "I have fought many species in my time, but I have never encountered one quite like them. They've endured impossible conditions on their homeworld. They've developed strategies that defy every rule of warfare." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "And now they come to our borders. If the humans are indeed on the move, we cannot afford to underestimate them." One of the council members, a tall, thin being with silver skin, spoke up. "You mean to say that we should just stand by while humanity creates chaos on the Salonok frontier?" "No," Kexer replied, his voice cold. "But we must approach this carefully. The human fleet is not like anything we've faced before. We need to understand their tactics before we take action." Thalia stepped forward. "That's why we need to act fast. We can't wait for them to make the first move. The humans are already in motion, and their fleet is unlike any we've ever seen." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. Thalia had made a name for herself with her in-depth research into human strategies. She had watched them grow from a primitive species into a formidable military force. She knew the human strength was not in their technology, but in their adaptability. "General Daniel Riker," Thalia continued, her voice steady. "He's the one leading the human fleet, a tactician unlike any other. He's famous for making the most out of any situation. His strategies are unpredictable, and that's what makes him so dangerous. He will use every resource, every advantage, and twist it to his will." A murmur ran through the room. Admiral Kexer's sharp gaze locked onto Thalia. "Then what do you suggest we do?" Kexer asked, his tone now more cautious than before. Thalia stood tall, her mind already running through possible options. "We need to prepare. First, we need to gather as much intelligence as possible. Find out where they are, how they're moving, and how we can counter their strategies. We can't wait for them to strike first." Jace, who had entered the room with Thalia, spoke up. "The humans have a reputation for engaging in psychological warfare. They don't just rely on brute force. They make you think you're winning, then strike when you least expect it." "Precisely," Thalia agreed. "We can't just rely on our technology or our fleets. We need to understand their mindset. And to do that, we need to send a message to the humans. Tell them we're not afraid to face them head-on, but we're not foolish either. We know what they're capable of." Kexer crossed his arms, still skeptical. "You speak of the humans as if they are some unstoppable force. They may have survived their harsh world, but that does not mean they will succeed in the galaxy." Thalia's eyes met his, her voice calm but firm. "It's not about survival anymore, Admiral. It's about dominance, and the humans are making it clear that they will not sit back and wait to be ruled. They will rule themselves, and they will take the galaxy if they have to." Kexer hesitated, then nodded slowly. He finally understood that this was no ordinary enemy. This was a species that refused to be broken, a species that had learned how to fight and win against all odds. As the council deliberated, one thing was clear: humanity's move had already begun, and nothing in the galaxy would be the same again. The galaxy had been living in a delicate balance, one that many thought would never be disrupted. But now, the Deathworlders, the humans, were pushing forward. No one had expected them to challenge the galaxy's established powers so quickly. Yet, here they were, heading straight toward the Salonok border, and the galaxy was about to feel the weight of their presence. General Daniel Riker stood at the front of the command center aboard the flagship Vigilant Fury, his sharp eyes scanning the vast holographic display of the battle ahead. Around him, his officers were preparing for the inevitable conflict. The humans had never been ones to back down from a fight, and the Salonok were in their sights. "General, we're receiving an update from our scouts," Lieutenant Commander Erin Hayes said, her voice steady but filled with concern. "The Salonok are aware of our presence. They've deployed several fleets to intercept us. Riker nodded without a hint of surprise. I expected as much. The Excelnock won't let us waltz into their space without a fight. He turned to the team of officers behind him, each one hand-picked for their strategic brilliance. Prepare the fleet. We won't wait for them to come to us. We'll strike first and hit them hard. There was a collective murmur of approval from the officers. Riker's reputation as a tactician had earned him the loyalty of his crew. They trusted him to lead them through the most impossible of situations. And this was no ordinary mission. It was a statement. Humanity wasn't just surviving anymore. They were ready to conquer. Meanwhile, on the Selnock homeworld, war leader Zorkel stood before the council. His cold blue eyes narrowed in fury. The humans had made their move. He had heard the rumors, the whispers of their growing strength, but he never thought they would dare to challenge the Excelnock directly. They are moving too quickly, Zorkel growled. The Deathworlders have crossed into our territory. They've launched an attack without warning. A second Excelnock council member, a female named Fresh, spoke up. We should strike before they can get any closer to our borders. Their fleet may be smaller, but they've shown themselves to be unpredictable. Zorkel clenched his fists. Unpredictable. They are dangerous, yes, but not without reason. We've seen their methods. These humans, they fight with more than just weapons. They fight with mind, with spirit. They adapt. And that makes them more deadly than any fleet we faced. The Excelnock were known for their raw power. Their fleets were massive, and their military strategies had been honed over millennia. But what they lacked was the ability to predict their enemies' actions. They relied on strength and technology, but the humans, no one could predict them. We will send our best fleet to intercept them, Zorkel said, turning to his officers. Prepare for battle. We cannot allow these creatures to think they can challenge us. Back aboard the Vigilant Fury, General Riker stood in the command center, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the view outside. The stars seemed to stretch endlessly in front of him. He had fought many battles in his time, but this one felt different. The Excelnock were no ordinary enemy, and their response would be swift and brutal. Riker wasn't concerned with how they would fight. He was more concerned with how humanity would respond when they were truly tested. General, the Excelnock have arrived, Lieutenant Commander Hayes said, her voice cutting through his thoughts. Their fleet is massive. They outnumber us by 3-1. Riker's eyes hardened. Numbers don't matter if you know how to use what you have. Prepare the fleet for a counterattack. I want to hit them before they can get organized. His voice was calm, but there was an intensity in his eyes that said everything. The humans had fought against impossible odds before. They had risen from the ashes of a destroyed world to become an interstellar power. They would not back down now. The battle began quickly, faster than anyone had anticipated. The Vigilant Fury and its fleet launched at the Excelnock with brutal precision. Riker's strategy was simple: strike hard, hit fast, and leave no time for retaliation. The Excelnock were not unprepared. Their ships, massive and heavily armed, quickly returned fire. The sound of weapons discharging echoed through the command center. Riker watched the battle unfold, his mind already several steps ahead of the enemy. Flank their left wing, Riker ordered. Hit them with everything we've got. We need to break their formation. The human fleet moved swiftly, taking full advantage of their smaller, more maneuverable ships. The Excelnock, despite their size and strength, struggled to keep up. The human tactics were relentless. They didn't just rely on brute force. They used speed, agility, and their unpredictability to their advantage. On the Excelnock flagship, war leader Zorkel watched in disbelief as his forces began to falter. The humans' attacks were unlike anything he had seen before. The Deathworlders were everywhere, striking at weak points and retreating before the Excelnock could retaliate. The humans were forcing him to rethink everything he had ever known about warfare. Order our fleets to regroup, Zorkel barked. We cannot let them break through. But it was already too late. Riker had anticipated their moves, using his understanding of human behavior to create chaos in the Xel'Nauk ranks. The human fleet was everywhere at once, hitting from all directions, leaving the Xel'Nauk scrambling to react. "This is impossible," Zorkel growled, his frustration growing. "How can they be so effective?" "They are Deathworlders," Vresh replied, her voice cold. "They don't fight to win. They fight to survive." The battle raged on for hours, but the outcome was becoming clear. The Xel'Nauk fleet was slowly being pushed back. General Riker, though calm on the outside, felt a surge of adrenaline as his plan came to fruition. Humanity had made a statement today, and the galaxy would know that they were not to be underestimated. "Admiral, we've broken through their lines," Lieutenant Commander Hayes reported. "The Xel'Nauk are retreating." Riker gave a small nod. "Good. Keep pushing. We're not done yet." The message was clear. Humanity was here to stay. They were no longer the weak, fragile species that many thought they were. They were fighters. And no one, not even the Xel'Nauk, could ignore them any longer. The Deathworlders had been unleashed, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The aftermath of the first battle was still unfolding across the Xel'Nauk border. General Daniel Riker stood on the bridge of the Vigilant Fury, his eyes fixed on the map of the galaxy in front of him. The Xel'Nauk fleet had been pushed back, but this victory had come at a great cost. While the human fleet had dealt a serious blow, it was far from the end of the conflict. "General," Lieutenant Commander Erin Hayes said, her voice steady but tinged with concern, "we've received a transmission from the Xel'Nauk. They're regrouping, and they've sent a message to the Galactic Council. They're calling for reinforcements." Riker nodded, his expression serious. "I expected as much. The Xel'Nauk are not ones to back down easily. They'll regroup and come back stronger." "Do you think the Council will send help?" Hayes asked, her eyes reflecting the uncertainty that had settled over the crew. "Maybe," Riker replied, his voice firm. "But it doesn't matter. We've shown them what humanity is capable of. The Council can decide how they want to play this, but we're not waiting for their approval." "Understood, sir." The words echoed in Riker's mind. Humanity wasn't asking for permission anymore. They had come to the galaxy to make their own way, and they weren't going to let anyone stand in their path. Whether the Galactic Council sent help or not, the Deathworlders were here to stay. On the Xel'Nauk homeworld, War Leader Zorkel paced back and forth in his war room, his mind racing. The humans had dealt a significant blow to his fleet, but they had underestimated the Xel'Nauk. They were stronger than anyone had realized. The first wave had faltered, but that wasn't the end. He could not afford to show weakness. "We will strike back," Zorkel growled. "Prepare our fleets. We will gather reinforcements from all across the sector." "War Leader," Vresh said, stepping forward. "The humans have proven their strength. We cannot just launch another assault blindly. We need to outthink them. Their tactics were unlike anything we have seen before." Zorkel paused. He had never been one for careful strategy, but the humans had forced him to reconsider his approach. They had fought differently, with a kind of calculated chaos that had caught him off guard. "We will outnumber them," Zorkel said, his voice cold with determination. "Their fleet may be smaller, but it's more than that. They are fearless. They do not hesitate. We will meet them head-on with everything we have." Back aboard the Vigilant Fury, General Riker stood with his officers in the command center, preparing for the inevitable next stage of the battle. The Xel'Nauk were regathering, and Riker knew they would be coming for revenge. But this time, humanity wouldn't be caught off guard. "We've intercepted their message," Lieutenant Commander Hayes said, her fingers flying over the console. "The Xel'Nauk are assembling a massive fleet. They're coming for us, and they won't stop until they've destroyed us." Riker's gaze hardened. "Let them come. We'll be ready." "We still don't have the numbers to go toe-to-toe with them," Hayes reminded him. "We've won the first round, But we can't keep up this pace for long without more reinforcements. We don't need more ships, Riker said, turning to face the crew. We need to use the strength we have. The Excellenok rely on brute force and size. We'll use speed and precision to break them. The crew nodded in agreement. Riker had always led by example, teaching them how to outthink their enemies and strike at the right moment. Now, they would put those lessons to the test. We can't afford to wait, Riker continued. Prepare the fleet for a new strategy. We'll hit their supply lines first, starve them of resources, then we'll make our move. Far away, in the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Council convened. News of the battle between the humans and the Excellenok had spread like wildfire. Representatives from all over the galaxy had gathered to discuss the situation, but the council was divided. Some were still skeptical about humanity's true strength, while others saw this as a dangerous turn of events. General Riker and his fleet have proven themselves, Thalia Drex said, standing before the council. They've shown that humanity is not a species to be underestimated. The Excellenok are regrouping, but we need to ask ourselves, do we continue to sit back and watch, or do we support the humans? Admiral Kexer, the Varech leader, looked down at Thalia, his reptilian eyes cold and calculating. The humans have shown strength, yes, but what happens when they face a true power? The Excellenok are just the beginning. What if the next species they face is one far more advanced? Thalia didn't flinch. And what if the next species they face isn't as powerful as you think? We've underestimated humanity before, and it's cost us. If we don't support them now, we risk everything. The council chamber was silent for a moment. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. No one wanted to make the first move, but everyone knew that the galaxy was changing. We can't let the Excellenok and the humans destroy each other, one of the council members, a blue-skinned alien from the Varnal Union, spoke up. But we also can't afford to let the humans get too powerful without our oversight. The balance of power is delicate. Then we'll have to trust the humans to find their own way, Thalia said. They've already shown us what they can do. We can't stop them, but we can guide them. Back in the heat of battle, Riker's fleet moved quickly and decisively. They had struck the Excellenok supply lines, hitting them where it hurt. The enemy's reinforcements were delayed, and their forces were stretched thin. It was a bold move, but it was working. The Excellenok were scrambling to regain control. We've broken their supply chain, Lieutenant Commander Hayes reported. The Excellenok are struggling to keep up. They won't be able to launch a full-scale attack for some time. Riker's expression remained grim. This battle isn't over yet. They'll come at us with everything they have. We need to be ready for their counterstrike. But for now, the tide had turned in humanity's favor. The humans were not just surviving. They were fighting, adapting, and pushing the galaxy's most powerful forces to their limits. The message was clear. The Deathworlders had come to stay, and they weren't going anywhere. The battle had reached a boiling point. The Excellenok had been forced to retreat once again, but General Daniel Riker knew that they would not give up so easily. Their pride had been wounded, and they would return with vengeance in mind. Humanity's initial victory had been sweet, but the war was far from over. Aboard the Vigilant Fury, Riker stood in the command center, his hands clasped behind his back as he observed the battle maps. The Excellenok fleet had regrouped, and their forces were now larger and more organized. It was clear that they had learned from their previous defeats. We've detected a massive fleet, General, Lieutenant Commander Erin Hayes said, her voice steady but urgent. The Excellenok are launching a full-scale offensive. They're coming at us with everything they've got. Riker took a deep breath, his mind already racing with strategies. Get the fleet into formation. We can't let them break through. We need to hit them hard and fast before they can organize. Hayes nodded, quickly relaying orders to the crew. All units, prepare for battle. We're facing a full assault. Keep your focus and stay sharp. Riker turned his attention back to the display. The Excelnok fleet was approaching fast, and it would be only a matter of time before the first shots were fired. But Riker wasn't afraid. He had fought many battles in his time, and he knew how to stay one step ahead of the enemy. The humans had proven themselves capable of standing against the might of the Excelnok, but this was going to be different. The Excelnok were no longer underestimating them. They had adjusted their tactics and were bringing everything they had to bear. The next battle would be a true test of humanity's resolve. On the Excelnok flagship, war leader Zorkel stood on the bridge, staring out at the vast expanse of space. His mind was focused, calculating. The previous defeats had been humiliating, but now he had a new plan. He would not make the same mistakes again. This time, they would crush the humans. War leader, Vresh said, her voice tense, "We've identified the human fleet. They're preparing for a direct confrontation." Zorkel's lips curled into a sinister smile. "Good. We've learned their tactics. We will surround them and force them into submission. They will have nowhere to run." The Excelnok warships moved into position, surrounding the human fleet on all sides. The humans had always relied on their speed and unpredictability, but now the Excelnok were ready. They would not be caught off guard again. "Prepare the fleet for battle," Zorkel commanded. "This will be the final blow." Back aboard the Vigilant Fury, the crew was ready. Riker stood at the center of the command room, watching as his officers worked quickly and efficiently. The Excelnok were closing in, and this battle would be unlike anything they had faced so far. But Riker was confident. The humans had always found a way to adapt and overcome. "General," Lieutenant Commander Hayes called, "the Excelnok fleet is in position. They're ready to engage." Riker gave a small nod. "Initiate Phase 1. We'll lure them into the trap." The human fleet, smaller and more maneuverable, began to pull back, seemingly retreating in disarray. The Excelnok fleet, believing they had the upper hand, moved in to surround the humans. But that was exactly what Riker had wanted. "Now," Riker said, his voice cold and steady, "activate the trap." In an instant, the human fleet reversed course, launching a coordinated assault from all directions. The Excelnok, unprepared for such a swift and sudden shift, were thrown into chaos. Ships exploded in flashes of light as human firepower struck their vulnerable points. "Target their flanks," Riker commanded. "Don't let them regroup. Hit them with everything we've got." The human fleet moved with deadly precision, exploiting every weakness in the Excelnok's formation. The Excelnok had relied on their sheer size and overwhelming numbers, but the humans had outsmarted them once again. On the Excelnok flagship, war leader Zorkel's eyes widened in shock as he watched his fleet falter. The humans had set a trap, and the Excelnok had walked right into it. The human ships, though fewer in number, were like swarming bees, striking from all sides and disappearing before the Excelnok could react. "How are they doing this?" Zorkel growled, his frustration boiling over. Vresh, standing beside him, narrowed her eyes. "They are not just fighting with their ships. They are fighting with their minds. They know how to use every advantage. The humans are unpredictable." Zorkel clenched his fists. "They think they can defeat us with tricks and tactics. No more. Prepare the final assault. We will end this now." The Excelnok ships began to regroup, trying to counter the human attack. But the humans were relentless, using every trick they knew to stay one step ahead. The battle was far from over, and both sides knew that the outcome would determine the future of the galaxy. Back aboard the Vigilant Fury, Riker and his officers continued their relentless assault. The Excelnok were regrouping, but they were still on the defensive. Humanity's tactics had taken them by surprise once again. "General, the Excelnok are shifting their strategy," Lieutenant Commander Hayes said. "They're regrouping for a final push." Riker's expression hardened. "They won't back down. But neither will we. We'll hit them where it hurts." The humans weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting for dominance. They had proven time and again that they could adapt, that they could think on their feet. The Xel'Nauk were powerful, but they were predictable. And that was humanity's greatest advantage. "We'll draw them in," Riker said, his voice low and dangerous. "And then we'll finish this once and for all." The human fleet adjusted its tactics, pulling the Xel'Nauk into a tight corner. Every ship, every crew member knew their role. They had been trained for this moment, and they would not falter. The final battle had begun. The tide of war was shifting, and humanity was no longer just a species trying to survive. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would soon realize that they had awakened the Deathworlders. The vigilant fury shook violently as another barrage of Xel'Nauk fire slammed into its shields. General Daniel Riker stood firm in the center of the command center, his eyes glued to the battle unfolding on the holographic display. The human fleet had been under intense pressure, but they had held their ground. It was a true test of their resolve. And so far, they had passed. "General, the Xel'Nauk are tightening their grip," Lieutenant Commander Erin Hayes reported, her voice steady but urgent. "They'd brought in reinforcements from the nearby sectors. Their numbers are growing, but they're still struggling to break through our lines." Riker clenched his jaw, his gaze unwavering. "Keep up the pressure. We can't let them regroup. We hit them now, and we don't stop until they've learned the price of underestimating us." "Understood, sir," Hayes replied, her fingers flying over the control panel as she relayed orders to the fleet. It had been days since the battle began, and both sides were exhausted. The Xel'Nauk had learned from their earlier mistakes, and now they were fighting smarter. But the humans had adapted too. Their smaller, more agile fleet had kept the Xel'Nauk off balance, and the human soldiers, every single one of them, had proven that they were willing to fight to the last breath. Far away, on the Xel'Nauk flagship, war leader Zorkel paced angrily. His fleet was no longer on the offensive. Despite their overwhelming numbers, the humans had proven to be more than a match for them. Zorkel had expected the humans to falter, to be scared off by the Xel'Nauk's size and power. But instead, they had fought with unmatched ferocity, never giving an inch. "War leader," Vresh said, stepping forward, "our ships are taking heavy damage. We cannot afford to continue this fight at this pace." Zorkel's lips curled into a snarl. "Do you suggest we give up? We cannot retreat now. The humans must be crushed." "But they're unpredictable," Vresh said, her voice full of caution. "Their tactics, every time we think we've cornered them, they slip away. We are losing valuable ships, and they're wearing us down." Zorkel stopped pacing and turned to face her, his eyes hard. "We have no choice but to press on. We've already lost too much ground. If we don't crush them now, we'll never have another chance." Back aboard the Vigilant Fury, General Riker knew that time was running out. The Xel'Nauk were regrouping again, and their reinforcements were beginning to make a real impact on the battlefield. But Riker had one final strategy in mind. He knew that if they were going to win this war, they had to do something that would leave a lasting mark on the Xel'Nauk. "Commander Hayes," Riker said, turning toward her, "prepare the fleet for the final phase of the operation. We're going to hit their command ship directly. If we take down Zorkel, the rest of their fleet will fall apart." "Are you sure we can do this, sir?" Hayes asked, her concern evident. "Their flagship is heavily guarded. It's risky." "I know," Riker said, his voice calm but filled with determination. "But we have no other choice. The longer we wait, the more damage they'll inflict. This ends now." As the human fleet continued to push forward, the Xel'Nauk were beginning to feel the weight of the battle. Their formations were becoming disorganized, their ships starting to retreat under the pressure. But Zorkel was determined to stand his ground. He would not let the humans walk away victorious. "All ships, focus fire on the human command ship," Zorkel ordered, his voice cold and commanding. "We will not allow them to strike our flagship. This ends now." The Excelenok fleet began to regroup and concentrate their fire on the Vigilant Fury, launching a full-scale assault on the human flagship. But Riker was prepared. He had known the Excelenok would make a desperate play to take out his command ship, and he had already anticipated their move. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Riker barked, his eyes scanning the battle in front of him. "Get us out of the line of fire. We're going to make a run for Zorkel's ship." The human fleet quickly broke formation, moving with the agility and precision that the Excelenok could not match. The Vigilant Fury darted between enemy ships, narrowly avoiding blasts as it closed in on the Excelenok flagship. "All units, follow my lead," Riker commanded. "We're going in." The human fleet broke off into smaller groups, surrounding the Excelenok flagship from all sides. It was risky, but if it worked, it would be the blow that would turn the tide of the entire war. Zorkel watched in disbelief as the human ships began to move toward his flagship. His fleet, once a force of overwhelming power, was being torn apart by the smaller human ships. He had expected them to retreat, to be intimidated by the sheer size of the Excelenok force. But instead, they were coming at him with everything they had. "All ships, prepare to defend the flagship," Zorkel shouted. "Do not let them get any closer. Destroy them." The Excelenok fleet shifted its focus entirely, firing everything they had at the human ships as they closed in on the flagship. But Riker had already anticipated this. The Vigilant Fury and the smaller human ships moved with speed and precision, dodging incoming fire as they drew closer and closer to Zorkel's command ship. Inside the Vigilant Fury, Riker could feel the tension building. His heart raced, but his mind remained clear. This was the moment he had been waiting for. If they could take out Zorkel, that Excelenok would lose their resolve. The human fleet would break their morale, and victory would be theirs. "Target Zorkel's flagship engines," Riker ordered. "Disable their movement. We'll force them to fight on our terms." The human fleet focused all its fire on the Excelenok flagship, specifically targeting its engines. The Excelenok were quick to retaliate, but their response was too slow. One by one, the engines of their flagship began to sputter and fail. "We've got them," Riker whispered to himself, a flicker of hope igniting within him. "Now, let's finish this." The Excelenok flagship was now helpless, and the rest of the Excelenok fleet could only watch as their command ship was slowly disabled. Riker gave the order, and the final push began. The humans were not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the future of their people. The Deathworlders had come to take their place among the stars, and nothing would stand in their way. The Vigilant Fury loomed ahead, its weapons blazing as it relentlessly pounded the Excelenok flagship. General Daniel Riker stood at the command center, his eyes cold and focused on the destruction unfolding before him. The battle was reaching its peak, and the fate of the war would soon be decided. "General," Lieutenant Commander Erin Hayes called out, her voice steady yet filled with urgency. "The Excelenok flagship's engines are down. Their fleet is in disarray. We've done it. The tide is turning." Riker's face remained serious, but a glimmer of pride showed in his eyes. "Keep the pressure up. We can't let them recover. Once their flagship falls, the rest will follow." The human fleet had proven its strength once again. Against overwhelming odds, against a foe far superior in numbers, the humans had adapted, strategized, and fought with everything they had. It wasn't just about brute strength. It was about precision, intelligence, and the will to never give up. On the Excelenok flagship, War Leader Zorkel stood in shock as his command ship, once a symbol of power, was slowly falling apart. His fleet was faltering, and the humans had shattered the morale of his forces. Every blast from the Vigilant Fury shook the flagship, and Zorkel could feel his grip on the galaxy slipping away. "War Leader," Vresh said, her voice trembling, "we're losing the flagship. If we don't retreat now, we'll lose everything." Zorkel's eyes burned with rage. "No, I will not run from these creatures. We will fight to the last. Do not give up now." But deep down, He knew the truth. The humans had outsmarted him. They had been relentless, adapting in ways that the Excelnok never expected. They had used their weaknesses, small fleet size, fewer numbers, as strengths. And now, Zorkel's empire was crumbling under the pressure. Back on the Vigilant Fury, the crew worked in unison, coordinating every movement with precision. The Excelnok flagship was now a sitting target, its shields down, its engines disabled. General Riker's orders were clear: eliminate the threat. Target their main weapon systems. Riker commanded. We need to make sure they can't launch a counterattack. The human fleet fired in perfect synchronization, sending wave after wave of energy blasts into the Excelnok flagship. Each shot was calculated, hitting vulnerable points in the massive ship's structure. The Excelnok had no time to react. They were too busy trying to deal with the relentless human assault. Zorkel stood on the bridge of his failing ship, his hands shaking with fury and disbelief. His flagship was losing power by the second, and the Excelnok fleet was in full retreat. The humans had broken their will, and now they were about to pay the price. Prepare to abandon ship, he growled. All remaining forces, get to escape pods. We are not going down with this ship. But as the Excelnok tried to retreat, the humans were already closing in. Riker's fleet had surrounded the Excelnok flagship, cutting off any chance of escape. The humans weren't just here to survive. They were here to win. The Vigilant Fury moved in closer, ready for the final strike. Riker's voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the weight of his words. This ends now. All units, prepare for final engagement, Hayes ordered, her eyes never leaving the display. We're going in. The human ships tightened their formation as they prepared to deliver the killing blow. The Vigilant Fury led the charge, its weapons firing in rapid succession, creating a storm of energy that ripped through the Excelnok flagship. The great warship groaned under the assault, its outer hull beginning to crack and break apart. On the Excelnok flagship, Zorkel watched in disbelief as his world crumbled around him. The human ships were relentless, bombarding his vessel without mercy. The lights flickered, alarms blared, and the once mighty ship now felt like a tomb. The Excelnok were not just losing this battle, they were losing their war. We were defeated by them, Zorkel muttered, barely able to believe the words. The humans. Vresh stood beside him, her face pale. It's over, war leader. There's nothing left. The humans have broken our fleet. We've lost. Zorkel gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with rage and frustration. I will not go down as a coward. I will die with honor. Let the humans have their victory, but I will make them pay for every moment of this war. Back aboard the Vigilant Fury, Riker and his crew watched as the Excelnok flagship began to crumble. The energy blasts from the human fleet had torn through the ship, and it was now a matter of moments before it would be no more. General, Lieutenant Commander Hayes said, a note of disbelief in her voice. It's happening. The Excelnok flagship is going down. Riker nodded, his eyes fixed on the display. It's not over yet. The Excelnok may fall today, but there will be others who will come for us. We need to be ready. But even as he said those words, Riker couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had held its ground and fought back an empire that had underestimated them. The Vigilant Fury had become a symbol of humanity's strength, and the crew that manned it had proven that Deathworlders were not to be trifled with. The Excelnok flagship, once a symbol of terror, now lay in ruins. The rest of the Excelnok fleet was in full retreat, and it was clear that they would not return anytime soon. Humanity had won this war. The Deathworlders had proven their place in the galaxy. As the remnants of the Excelnok fleet scattered into the darkness of space, General Riker stood silently in the command center of the Vigilant Fury, his mind focused on the future. They had fought hard, they had sacrificed, but they had won. We've won, Hayes said softly, her voice filled with relief. Riker turned to her, his expression solemn. Yes, we have. But this war isn't the end. It's just the beginning. The galaxy will know what humanity is capable of, and we will be ready for whatever comes next. The vigilant fury floated in the silence of space, the battle finally over. Humanity had proven itself, not just as survivors, but as a force to be reckoned with. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they would never be forgotten. A new era had begun.